when we invested in Swiggy in 2015, we had been looking at food delivery market for more than 2 years. So I would think in my mind कि यार ऐसा कोई कुछ बनाए ना तो बहुत exciting होगा. I had seen enough founders to know that when they have to start up, it's not a choice in their mind. Today it's obvious. All of them we see Zomato, Swiggy, t-shirts all around us. But that time, no one had done that.
Everyone here has already seen Shark Tank now. So everyone knows that, startups are evaluated by the 3 T's.
Grocery market was 20x of food market, not just food delivery, even eating out. Being an entrepreneur is significantly harder than being a VC. There is no comparison at all.
So I think everyone knows Mukul here, obviously. But I just wanted to do a quick introduction about his journey so far. But then also wanted to introduce him as to how we met for the first time and what me and Ankit have experienced so far. So Mukul, of course, did his MBA from IIM Lucknow. Worked with McKinsey for 3 years, then joined Safe Partners, which is now Elevation Capital, in 2010 as an associate. Grew the ranks, is now the co-managing partner, has got portfolio companies like Swiggy, An Academy, Spinny, Meesho, and many others as well. So those are all his achievements. But if I were to narrate some of my experiences with Mukul, I think this was the first time that even I was going fundraising. So the VC ecosystem as a whole, outside in, is pretty intimidating. So when both me and Ankit also started the fundraising process, we were meeting a lot of VCs, and it was intimidating. Outside in also you feel that pressure, and it's all true. But meeting Mukul and his team was a breath of fresh air. And probably this is something that I've never shared with you before, but even before we met Elevation Capital, we had spoken to a lot of founders from Elevation Capital, and they just told us that they are different. And to be honest, even now it's very difficult for me to explain or put in words what that difference exactly is. What are those traits or that culture at Elevation and how it's so different from anything else that we noticed. But overall, I think both me and Ankit consider ourselves as extremely, extremely lucky individuals. The whole of Mesa, I think, needs to be built very differently, and we are glad to have Mukul and Elevation Capital here as partners with us.
Thank you so much, Varun, for the kind introduction, and really excited to meet all of you. Congratulations, first of all, on taking this step of joining Mesa in what I'm sure will be a very, very transformational journey for you. By the way, on this fundraise experience that you spoke about, I think Ankit is still here, and my experience was very different. It wasn't these guys chasing us. I was chasing Ankit for almost a few weeks before I could get a meeting with him, and I know we'll be talking about fundraising tips. So if you have the credentials, that's actually a good tip, playing hard to get. I would keep pinging him that, hey Ankit, so I was based out of Gurugram at that time, and I would keep pinging him, hey Ankit, I'm in Bangalore, should we catch up? No, sir, we are still firming up the idea. Give us some time. Then 2 weeks later, Ankit, I'm in Bangalore. I can come wherever you are. Can we meet? Give me some more time. So that's how the relationship started. But very, very fortunate that we got to partner, and super excited about what the future holds for Mesa. And thank you once again for having me today.
Thank you. So when we were thinking about what kind of questions we wanted to ask you, we've already seen a bunch of your podcasts. So we've already gone through most of the questions that are usually asked to you. But because this is more of an intimate setting, we thought that we would take advantage of that and would ask you some of the questions that have probably not been asked to you before. But before we jump deeper into that, we just wanted more insights into how you've built a career for yourself. Out of McKinsey, you worked there for 3 years. I'm sure the world would have been an oyster for you at that point of time because you had the right credentials, IIM Lucknow and then McKinsey. But you decided to join what at that point of time would have been a pretty young fund, right? It was 9 years into SEF being just formed. So this was 2010. You decided to join as an associate. Could you kind of walk us through how you were thinking about those decisions? What were the trade-offs that you took into mind when taking that decision, and how it all kind of ended up?
Check, 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 check. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I had joined McKinsey straight out of campus, was there for 3 years, and actually, I really loved that experience. In consulting, you start as an associate on a project, you are managing one work stream of that project, and then at least in McKinsey, 2.5, 3 years into the system, they call you a JEM. It's Junior Engagement Manager. Basically, you are then playing the role of a manager, but getting paid an associate salary. So that's the so salary is obviously not a manager one, but the role suddenly becomes very exciting because from managing a part of the project, you start running the full project. So that was the best phase for me, which was almost 10, 12 months. At the same time, at least in back in the day, lot of work that McKinsey used to do was strategy, and I used to feel that hey, we are working so hard coming up with what we think are very very smart insights, but how much of that is really getting translated into impact and action, and that was in best cases 20-30%, in a lot of cases single digit percent. And then I started questioning myself that is this what I want to do long term, because at the end of the day you are still an advisor, you have very little skin in the game. But this was at the back of the mind. Day to day I was having a great time. uh, as luck would have it, one of the VC funds, not safe, reached out to me through a recruitment firm, that hey, we are expanding our team, do you want to meet us? And that got me curious, so I started, and till then, so VC was very early in India. Most folks from McKinsey would either go to private equity firms, uh, or they would go to large corporates in their strategy teams. And private equity is funds which are investing at much later stages in larger profitable companies. VC is coming in super early. So that's when I started reading up about it, and it felt like it was an inflection point in India where there were very early green shoots around tech. I remember, so this was 2010. Make My Trip was going IPO that year. Flipkart was raising their Series A around that time. Until then, we would all shop on Amazon whenever someone was in US. So someone was traveling to US, you would order stuff, they would bring it back for you. I'm sure given the average age in this group, this might be hard to relate to. But when we saw Flipkart in India and you could get a book at your home in 3-4 days, it was a magical experience. So it was clear that something new was starting to happen. And thanks to that fund, I did that research, went, met them. Um, Also, something very serendipitous happened around that time. So while I was preparing for that process, one of my business school seniors and McKinsey seniors was working with Seth, and we had never met. And one day I was just going to play badminton with a friend and colleague at McKinsey, and this senior was also his friend. So we met at the badminton court. And then I told him, hey, can I catch up with you? I'm interviewing with this fund. I need some advice. So he said, sure. So caught up with him, got his advice, went through that funds process, got an offer. It was a Bombay-based role. I've been in my whole of my life in NCR and Gurgaon. 3 months back, moved to Bangalore. So Bombay seemed like a very, very less exciting proposition for me. So, and anyways, I thought I'm having a good time at McKinsey. Why jump the gun? So decided to say no to that offer. And then 2 months later, that colleague, his name is Deepak Gaur, he reached out to me that, hey, we at SAF are now hiring. Do you want to interview with us? And I went, met the team, really liked the team. And even at that time, when it was so early for the VC ecosystem, SAF was one of the earliest investors in tech in India. So we had done Series A in Make My Trip back in 2005. We were investors in this company called Just Dial. Have people in this room heard of? So in the pre Zomato or Urban Company era, Just Dial was the go-to platform for local services. So we were early investors there, early investors in Paytm. At that time, it was called 197. So I could see that if personally I'm going to bet my career on this tech tailwind, this is the fund, because they are already catching these companies ahead of the curve, and just culturally very very nice set of people. So that's how it happened, and decided to join. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far.
No, that's brilliant. And power of the network, right? We keep telling people here also that this is the last set of friends that you're going to be making, like business school friends. But just tapping into that network sometimes just opens up opportunities that you might not have access to or might not even know about. But now it's been almost 14 years at Elevation Capital. That's a long time as compared to usually people switching jobs 2 to 3 years. So what made you stay this long, and what kind of keeps you going? What motivates you? And to be honest, you must have gone through every single piece of work that a VC needs to go through. What part of that work excites you the most?
Sure, sure. Lot of questions, so I'll try and cover them one by one. By the way, so on the previous one, power of network, yes. Also, power of serendipity, because I and all of us have these moments in our lives where I feel like if I had not gone for that badminton match, I would have been in a parallel universe. So no matter how hard you are working, how smart you think decisions you are taking, there are these moments which completely change the path. But obviously, that network enables serendipity, effort enables serendipity. Now, coming to your question, see, there are few things very unique about VC. One is that by definition, you are investing in trends which will play out in the future. And therefore, you are meeting founders at very, very early stages, learning about what's the latest, which is happening in technology, which is happening in the startup world. And therefore, both the learning curve is very, very steep and very, very challenging. So when I joined, my primary focus at that time, tech used to be largely e-commerce. Over time, it evolved to uh, local services, including like food delivery, urban company, etc. Then fintech, SaaS. Now there is this whole wave of AI. So every 2, 3, 4 years, you have to completely reinvent yourself. And that is something which personally I have really liked, knowing that, hey, you are meeting the smartest people out there, learning from them what are they building, how they are imagining the future, and getting challenged all the time, and therefore growing all the time. So that is one part, which I have found really, really exciting. Second, which you asked, that there are multiple roles as a VC, from a deal sourcing to saying, okay, this is where we want to invest, to then the partnership once you invest. And for me, this third part has been the most enriching, where I've been fortunate to work with a few founders who are just phenomenal leaders, and seeing their journeys from when we invested someone who is a mid 20s, very, very young founder, to how within 3, 4 years they grow to becoming exceptional leaders. And they're my role also, from being a mentor when we invest, to in 2, 3 years getting to learn so much from them, and in 5 years it reverses. So, for example, with Vidit, who's the founder of Meesho, now when I meet him, I go to him with questions, because a lot of those questions for me are around people leadership, building org, because he's running 1,000 people organization. Elevation is a 50, 60 people organization. So I learned so much from him on how to think about building that org. So those relationships, and many of these end up becoming deep personal relationships as well. So that for me has been the most fulfilling part of this journey.
It's amazing. And just as a segue to that, given that you work with entrepreneurs so closely and you get a insights into their minds, how they take decisions, in your journey, in your career, did you ever yourself think about becoming an entrepreneur? If yes, no, then why?
Yeah, I know that's a uh, fun question. So early on in my career, this was I think 3, 4 years into Elevation, this thought did come to my mind, and it's a combination of two things. One, VC is a very long term game. So for us, like typically in a year, each of us invest in couple of companies, and we are investing so early at seed, series A. It takes a long time to know whether that company is doing well or not, and therefore around that 2 to 4 year mark, there is this phase of disillusionment which comes when you are questioning कि यार क्या हो रहा है, मतलब am I putting in all the effort, is it really translating into output or not. Also, you are investing under taking decisions under so much ambiguity. So am I the right, uh, do I have the right capabilities to be a VC or not? So that was happening on one end at that part of the journey. Second, I was seeing lot of founders who are very young starting businesses, and then the kind of businesses which I would think in my mind कि यार ऐसा कोई कुछ बनाए ना तो बहुत exciting होगा. Or and then I would meet a founder 3-4 months out who's building exactly that, and then they raise a seed and a series A, and you feel like यार ये तो मैं भी कर सकता हूँ. तो ये why am I on this side? I almost had an 18-month phase where I had one foot in VC and one foot in dreaming about being an entrepreneur. But then I felt like yaar, this by being in these two boats, neither am I doing justice to my current role, nor am I doing justice to being a founder. And by then I had seen enough founders to know that when they have to start up, it's not a choice in their mind. It's a very, very clear decision. Then I said, screw it. Let me focus on my work at Elevation. And then if it has to happen, it'll happen. And since then, so this was 2013, 14. After that, I've never, also that feedback loop in VC started playing out. So some early investment started to break out. And then that thought has never come back.
You must be seeing this kind of play out also in young associates and VPs and principals who kind of join the firm, right? Because the first time they start investing, the fruits of their investments will be 3 to 4 years down the line. But if suppose, I think even the students here, and this is a question that even I had asked myself because I was very interested in the startup ecosystem in India, but there's the VC role and there's the entrepreneurship track that one can take. What do you think is the fundamental difference, if you had to probably name one difference between someone who's a successful entrepreneur and a successful VC, and is there a difference even?
See, there are multiple differences, and I don't want to say they are even similar because being an entrepreneur is significantly harder than being a VC. There is no comparison at all. And one trait which it will be very obvious, but one trait where the difference is the most stark is risk-taking ability. Because as a founder, you are putting all your eggs in one basket. As a VC, I'm saying you will see the outcome in 3-4 years, but still you are building a portfolio over time. You are still getting paid nicely. So it's a job at the end of the day, at least when you are a young professional, versus as a founder, you are all in. And that, in my mind, that risk-taking ability, and if I look at that 18-month phase, which I spoke about earlier, it was again that risk-taking ability. That was I willing to say, कि यार founder बनना है, startup करना है, let me leave Elevation, let me then go out and figure out. I never did that, and that's why I said either do that or be all in. Don't have one boat in each, one foot in each boat. So that is the biggest difference, and beyond that, on most other traits, you have to be 10x, whether it is resilience. Being a founder is so hard. You have so many ups and downs. So that level of resilience needed is just at a very, very different level. The level of perseverance, commitment needed is at a very, very different level. So there is no comparison at all in both the professions.
Got it. And now, switching gears a little bit, just trying to understand more about your investment philosophy and how you think about startups. Everyone here has already seen Shark Tank now. So everyone knows that startups are evaluated by the 3 T's. Does people know the 3 T's?
Even I don't know. I haven't watched Shark Tank.
So Shark Tank, the 3 T's, as Anupam Mittal says, is team, TAM, and timing, right? So overall, I think there are enough podcasts which kind of say, okay, this is the business ideas, the customer insight, how large the market is the timing right? Are there enough tailwinds? Is there founder market fit? But I wanted to go a step further and ask you that when you are investing in a startup, besides all of these, usually well known, and they are much more nuanced. I'm not saying that each one of us knows what the nuance is there, but at least we know the topic. But are there any other softer signals that you look for when investing in a startup, and signals which might not be as evident as maybe how good the founder is, or or how large the market is? So are there any soft signals that you look for that you've developed for yourself?
So there are a couple of things I would add. One which has to do with the market, and second which has to do with the founder or the team. So on the market, this is again a learning I had along the way that TAM or size of market is important, but what is significantly more important is severity of pain point for the consumer. And let me make it very real with an example. So if we go back to, let's say, days of pre Swiggy food delivery, So at that time, Swiggy or Zomato, at that time you would have to call up a restaurant, find the number on Zomato or just dial, call up a restaurant, order food. Then you have no visibility. Where is it? Will it come in half an hour or 2 hours? So it was. So if I look at food delivery as a market, when we invested in Swiggy, it was small. But if I look at severity of pain point, it was very high because that it was a very very painful experience, and you would only you would also agree with it that you would order very rarely on a special occasion. Otherwise, obviously, you would go out. Uh, so that is one example. On the other hand, if I take example of grocery in Indian ecosystem, the market is even when we invested in Swiggy, grocery market was 20x of food market, not just food delivery, even eating out. But in Indian context, severity of pain point was very low because you have this Kirana network. So for most of our products, it's there within 5-7 minutes walking distance. And that's why if you look at the pace at which food delivery has grown versus the pace at which grocery has grown, food delivery grew much faster despite being a 1/20th market size. And grocery now, so there was this big basket wave, then there was the grofers in the and pepper tap and that wave. Now in the third generation of Instamart, Zepto, Blinkit, it seems like the market is growing when the consumers are more affluent, there is a willingness to pay, but it has taken much longer. So that's the first point, which is severity of pain point. And with this experience, I always rate it significantly higher than size of the market. Second learning which I have had is which is on the team side, that is the founder bringing some counterintuitive insight and some very deep insight. And sometimes I'm using the word deep, but sometimes it can be very very simple. So going back to the Swiggy example again, at that point when we invested in Swiggy in 2015, we had been looking at food delivery market for more than 2 years. We had met more than 50 teams in food delivery, but we were not able to cross the line. There used to be this company called Tiny Owl. At that time, they had built a very, very clean app. The team had the right credentials, IIT Bombay, housing, but that clean app did not reflect in their customer retention, cohorts, etc. And then we met Harsha, who's the Swiggy founder, and he was the first founder to say that, hey, if you have to solve food delivery in India, you have to build your own logistics. Today, it's obvious. All of them, we see Zomato, Swiggy t-shirts all around us. But that time, no one had done that. And even globally, now Uber Eats, DoorDash, etc. have their delivery. Back in the day, there were companies like Grubhub and Just Eat who did not have delivery. So Tiny Owl was looking at those global comparables, trying to replicate in India. Harsha's insight was much more bottoms up, that in India, restaurants are very unorganized. They have this one person who will cut vegetables, clean the restaurant, and then also do delivery at lunch and dinner time, which can never be reliable. So you have to have delivery. And that was the insight which at a very small scale, they were live only in Kormangla. We could see playing out in their cohorts. So that's the second thing that does the founder. And this repeatedly I've seen the founder will have a very counterintuitive, deep customer first insight on which they are building their business. So those are the two things which I hold very, very highly when evaluating where to invest.
A lot to unpack there for everyone here, right? I think here at Mesa, there's a term that we use that you have to choose a customer who has their hair on fire. You know, unless and until the problem that you're solving is urgent, then people are not going to look at you because there's just so much noise out there. So this is such an important question for you to also ask, whether it's your BYOB or it is MSL. The problem that you're trying to solve, how frequent and urgent it is, right? And this metric can either be frequency into urgency, or it can probably be just an less frequent problem, but so important that it is solved that your solution actually pops out. Regarding customer insights, I think that's the trickiest piece, because getting a customer insight can probably take you 5 to 6 years. So and it was so interesting to even understand the Swiggy insight, because we look at food delivery today and we take that, of course, logistics will be handled by the food delivery company, but the fact that it was an insight that long ago was something that very interesting. Any other companies that come to your mind which gave like a very counterintuitive customer insight and built on top of it?
See, so the other one is Meesho. And Meesho, not in its current avatar, when they started out, or when we invested, in fact, when they started out, their initial thesis was, can we build a Shopify equivalent, like a storefront for micro entrepreneurs? And let me spend 30 seconds on each. So micro entrepreneurs were these, actually there are still a lot of them. They are mostly women who would curate products, mostly in fashion lifestyle, share within their communities, family, etc. on WhatsApp, take orders, and then get those orders shipped to the customer. So there is this company called Tupperware. Some of you may have heard of it. So they were the classic, that multi-level marketing type of organized place. But India has always had this unorganized micro entrepreneur ecosystem. And Meesho's initial thesis was, can we give them a storefront? So today they share products on WhatsApp. They get orders on WhatsApp, payment reconciliation, shipping, all of that is completely fragmented. So can they have a very simple mobile storefront where the customer can come, see their catalog, order, pay, and also track shipping? They saw very strong adoption from micro entrepreneurs for that product, but no willingness to pay. Because for someone who is such a small business, how much will they pay for software? But at the same time, again, being customer first, Vidit, Sanjeev, they would go sit with these entrepreneurs, see their behavior, understand their pain points, and they realized one big pain point for them was sourcing, because they were all small businesses, and therefore for them they were sourcing from a small trader or wholesaler 3 or 4 steps away from the manufacturer. So neither they would get the best quality, nor would they get the best variety, nor would they get the best pricing. And that's when they said, okay, let us try and solve this problem. And they started piloting supply, where they would go deeper in the supply chain and offer those products to these resellers within the app. And that ended up being that hair on fire type of problem, where the adoption was really quick. And then they said, the storefront is fine, but this is the bigger problem. And they moved to this thesis. And so I had actually known Vidit for almost 1.5 years before we invested. So I had seen them from this journey to get to supply, to then seeing the kind of early traction they were seeing on the supply marketplace. And for us, it was not an obvious insight at that time, because neither am I the TG who's buying from a micro entrepreneur, nor do I have anyone in my family who is a micro entrepreneur. So it's hard to relate to it as a consumer. So then we said, okay, this data looks very promising. Let us do a lot of reseller interviews. So we did 30, 40 reseller interviews, and we realized it became very obvious it was a hair on fire category taking off, and then we decided to invest. So that's the other example. And the only thing I would add is this customer interviews for us has been a very, very powerful tool, because a lot of times, whether it is customer love or otherwise, the kind of emotion you feel in those interviews can be a game changer in terms of what the final decision is.
Got it. And so I want to double click on customer obsessiveness. You speak about that so much, right now also, that founders who understand their customers are people that you would want to invest in. And we at Mesa also focus on customer obsessiveness a lot. And sometimes वो ऐसा लगता है कि it's a very simple thing, that of course there's a customer and I understand my customer. But have you, in your experience, seen a significant difference between founders who understand their customers and founders who don't?
See, there is a significant difference, and you are right. As a founder, the customer is king. So everyone, in theory, should care for customers, but it's an emotion. Like, for the founder, is the primary goal why they are building that business to make their customers' life better? Or is the primary goal to say, I want to create a large company, I want to build valuation, etc., etc. And for that, customer is important. Both are very different lenses. And it's also hard to pick. If I go back 7-8 years, now these VC playbooks are also much more templatized, right? So as a founder who's coming to meet you, who has listened to three of your podcasts, उनको पता है कि यार customer obsession मुकुल सब जगह बोलते हैं, तो अभी 3 slide तो उस पर डाल दो. But so it's hard to pick. But it is an emotion. You can see that. And apart from emotion, where it actually shows up is in these insights. So if I look at Meesho's insight was because of customer obsession. If I look at Harsha's insight, it was because of customer obsession. So when it shows up there, actually, if I look at Mesa, so before Mesa, there were a lot of, I have met, again, double-digit companies which were trying to build business school of the future. I'm just using that term a little loosely, but lot of them were going for scale from day one, and therefore, how do I get thousands of students, hundreds of students? And that we would never get excited about that thesis, because it was not clear what outcome are you delivering to the students. Are you really concerned about their future, or are you solving for scale? Scale is important for me as a founder, not for my customer. Versus when I met Ankit over dinner that day, um, the way he was thinking about building Mesa, and then when we met later, about saying that okay, scale will happen, we don't have to worry about scale, but can we make a truly transformational program for students who want to go into the technology world? That again is very customer first, saying where is the world moving, what is the need gap which is missing, and for students what could really help them elevate in their careers. So these are the examples which show up in these insights.
Yeah, and I think overall, we've also observed this when we ran Mesa Startup Lab last time, that students who spent a lot of time understanding their customers, I would say that was 50% of becoming an entrepreneur. If you can understand your customer, what their behaviors are, goals are, motivations are, where they live, where they stay, where they buy, where they walk to, and so on and so forth, I think you truly start thinking like the customer, and then you can solve for them. The next thing that I wanted to ask you was, while there have been a lot of wins in your experience, I also wanted to talk about the losses a little bit. Could you kind of walk us through, say, two losses during your experience here at Elevation, where retrospectively you feel you took the wrong decision to either invest or pass, and what taught you about what are the things that it taught you, and how it kind of changed your investment philosophy?
So let me share a couple of examples. And in VC, I'm sure a lot of you would have heard the biggest errors are errors of omission, where you had the opportunity to invest in an exceptional founder, exceptional company, and you did not invest. And again, stating the obvious, because there the upside you miss out is unlimited, versus in cases errors of commission, you invested, the company did not work out. Even if you lost all your capital, your loss is limited to your capital invested. So both are actually errors of omission, and learned very valuable lessons from both. First one was Ola. This was so we had looked at Ola at the time of their Series A round as well. At that time, there was Ola, Taxi for sure. There were a couple of others, but these two were breaking out. And we said the biggest, like, one, it was unclear which team was executing better. The second bigger question for us was the market size, and this learning I mentioned about market size and severity of pain point actually came up from that experience. Because at that time, I remember the overall taxi market, and this is, by the way, Uber and Uber in the US and Ola in India were being built in parallel. So there was no future to look to. Like I was saying, for Flipkart, there was an Amazon. So there was a global comparable that, hey, what could the world look like? In this case, it was getting built in parallel. So we looked at taxi market in India. We said, hey, it's a 10,000 crore market. We looked at travel market, which was the closest comparable, which is Make My Trip type place. That okay, where is that market? How much of that is penetrated online? Therefore, if taxi gets there, what will the size of that opportunities? And we got to like a 150, 200 million type of number. That's the kind of GMV or booking value that Ola could get to. And we said, no, let's pass. We'll wait for now. And that was a big mistake, because the market was small, but the severity of pain point was significant. Again, back in the day, even now we have Meru, etc. And that time you would you would call them to book. There was no app, and they would put you in a queue, and you were on the phone for 35, 40 minutes, and then only to be told later that next morning there is no cab available. So that severity of the unfortunate part is, over time, Ola Uber service has also deteriorated a lot. Maybe now there's an opportunity to do something again, but severity of pain point was significant, and which we missed. So that's the learning which I spoke about earlier also. The second one was delivery. So we had looked at delivery very closely in the Series B round, and it was not a typical tech investor type of investment, because it's fundamentally it's a logistics company. When we met them at the time of Series B, it was very clear. So e-commerce was scaling really fast. And there were legacy players like Blue Dart, which was one of the better ones, but Aramex and many others, I don't even remember the names. It was clear that they were not able to keep up to speed with the pace at which market was growing and customer expectations were growing. And there were two new age players, Delivery and Ecom Express. And when we spent time with both of them, it was very clear Delivery was the stronger team, had the tech first DNA. They were hiring very high quality people in their team. So after the first meeting, we came out really excited that we should definitely be investing here. And then we started going deep into their data. And on some of the areas, so one specific one I remember was there in these B2B businesses, your money comes 60, 90 days after you have delivered the service. And their receivable cycles were longer than what we would have been comfortable with. And we said, Ki yaar, this control on receivables, cash flow does not seem very, very tight. Should we do it? Should we not do it? I would say fundamentally we lost for it, forest for the trees. We just got lost in the details and eventually decided not to invest. And in hindsight, the learning for me has been that you in startups when you are investing there will always be weaknesses, but you have to be looking out for extreme strength and saying that is there a very clear spike, and is that the spike which will matter in the long run. And if I go back here, right, the spike was on technology, spike was on quality of team, and in a market which was at that time doubling, tripling year on year, those were the capabilities you needed to deliver a great service quality. And some of these things around, like you get a strong CFO and some of these things around cash flow etc can be sorted. So willing to overlook that weakness for a strong strength is very important, which in that moment we did not do. So that was the other learning for me.
Got it. And just to kind of build up on that, and something that I've even observed, like even during our brainstorm session recently, where we were exceeding even 2 hours, there was this quote that I think Gary Tan from Y Combinator had kind of said that the difference between bad VCs and good VCs is that bad VCs will poke holes in your ideas and will say, okay, this will not work, this will not work, this will not work. Whereas good VCs will imagine a world where your idea will work and will try to probably forecast whether that world is going to be built by you or whether that world is going to happen on its own. What do you think about that? Like, has your thinking about how to invest also been kind of crafted on the basis of that? Like, what do you have to say about this particular statement? I wanted to just understand your point of view.
See, I would 100% agree with this statement. And for me, it's been an evolution because I came from a McKinsey training, which was much more analytical, much more bottoms up. And therefore, like if I look at whether it's Ola, Delivery, these are all more bottoms up mistakes being made versus dreaming the future. And over time, I've realized personally this dreaming the future is also very, very important. I don't want to trivialize the first, but dreaming the future is also very important and more fulfilling, much more energizing. So I spoke about when you asked what's the most exciting part of this career for me. I spoke about those founder relationships, and they're ex- the most exciting memories, most fulfilling memories are those sort of either brainstorming session or you are sitting over drinks and then thinking about what it could be. And that's what gives me a lot of energy. That's what gives those founders a lot of energy. And yeah, so I completely agree with that, but without trivializing the first, because that bottoms up rigor is also really, really important. Because as a VC, you are seeing the company from a distance and you are seeing multiple companies, so you have that vantage point also, and therefore your ability to identify risks before the founder is also higher. And therefore can you be very objective, honest, and flag those to them as well. So both of those are equally important for me. The first, this one came naturally, that dreaming is something which has evolved over time thankfully, and is also very fulfilling.
Yeah. So switching gears again. So today there are going to be 5 budding founders who are going to be doing VC pitches. Even Manish is coming down, and so I wanted to ask you a few questions that could probably guide them a little bit. First question that I wanted to ask you is that, given that you've been in so many pitches, are there like 3 mistakes that come to your mind which are very common that founders make when at an early stage they are pitching to VCs?
So one mistake. I have seen founders make is trying to second guess what the VC wants to hear, and that's the worst thing you can do. Uh, as a founder, and just this goes back to that customer first insight. If you have a customer first view of the world, you should have high conviction on what you are going after, and balance that conviction with also saying that okay, I'll listen openly. I'm meeting someone who's hopefully smart, who's seen few more startups, so I'll be open, but I'm not trying to fine tune what I'm saying basis what this VC wants to hear. That is number one thing, because then as a VC, I feel like, hey, do you really have a worldview or not? What are you betting on, and therefore, can do I believe in that or not? So that is one. Second mistake I have seen some founders make is they are too worried that hey, can I fully share my idea or not? How much data should I share? Will these VCs take it to some other startup? So again, it's like a marriage that we are getting into, and unless you are fully open and transparent, so don't worry about the idea. It's all about execution in the end of the day. So be fully transparent, fully open about what the idea is, what the data is. Don't be guarded or measured there at all. Third is lot of the founder qualities, and you we didn't talk much about that, but a lot of the founder qualities which we look for, they actually come out only in deep personal conversations. So there again, when you are meeting a VC, spend 10 minutes on your life journey and how that has shaped you into who you are, that has brought you to where you are into starting that business, and then jump into the business, versus mostly you just do like a 30-second professional intro and then jump into market, etc. So always spend 10 minutes on what your journey is, why you are the right founder to build that business in that market. So those are three things I would pick.
So that's this intentionality, this purpose of why we are building, something, and why it has kind of come to this like matters a lot, right? And that kind of happened even with Mesa. So both me and Ankit worked in higher education. Pratham kind of faced the problems ourselves. It kind of fell through that this was our purpose and this is what we wanted to do in our lives. Any red flags that you would say that okay, ye to nahi hona chahiye?
Yeah, red flag hopefully anyways won't happen with this group of people, but for us as a fund, when we see any even slightest gray on integrity, we stay away. And there are enough other investors who would justify that as being street smart, or hey, it's fine, the founder was just overselling. They said X, but the actual numbers are 0.6x. We have stayed away because these are again 10, 12, 15-year relationships, and you want to be in a relationship where you can trust the other person at face value. So that would be my advice. Again, it's you have to sell your vision, but when it comes to facts, be completely transparent, completely upfront, without any sort of massaging or positioning. So that slightest gray shade of gray we have stayed away from completely.
Got it. One thing that even I was interested in knowing was, given that you've been through so many startup journeys, could you kind of take me through the journey of one startup that you saw right from the stage where you knew the founder before you invested, the founder was building something, then you did a seed investment and saw that entire startup grow right from critical decisions being taken, certain tenets that they followed throughout their journey to whatever it is right now. So if you could kind of run us through that journey, I think it would be very helpful for all of us here.
Done. So let me actually, it's very timely. Let me talk about FirstCry. And the reason I say timely is because they are in the process of going public. I think they'll list in next 2 weeks. And also one of those companies where Supam, who's the founder CEO, is very media shy. He stays under the radar. So Meesho, Swiggy, all of these are well covered, but not much is there about FirstCry. So we invested in FirstCry in early 2011. This was the first round of capital that they raised, and at that time we had been looking at vertical commerce plays, and like I said, in those days it was more about looking to the west, that what has happened there, and then what can we learn, and are there similar plays in India. So this in the US, there used to be this company called diapers.com, which was acquired by Amazon. and we felt that something similar could be built in India as well. So we were meeting a bunch of founders. In that process, we met Supam. By the way, so Supam, we spoke about this intentionality uh, of like personal pain point or personal experience. Supam came from a different lens, just like us as VCs. His view also was more rational and objective, saying, okay, e-commerce is a big tailwind. What all verticals are taken? Which ones are remaining? And this baby and kid seems to be interesting enough. So his starting point was very objective. But after that, it was very customer first, which I'll talk through in the journey, versus a deep lived pain point. But when we met him, one his he was a second time founder. So the first startup was an okay outcome, not a great outcome, but just that maturity in what it takes to build a business, the quality of founding team he had assembled, all of that was very strong. Second, in that first meeting itself, his aggression, ambition uh, was very, very palpable. And this was, I had joined Elevation in 2010, so this was 4 or 5 months into the VC career, and probably I would say I would have met a few hundred companies till then, not a lot. And when I met Supam in that meeting, I had goosebumps listening to his pitch. So that's how his conviction, passion, ambition shone through in that conversation. So that's when we decided to invest in that company, and they have had multiple phases to their life. The first phase was when there were multiple baby focus players. So there was FirstCry, there was Baby OA, there was Hush Babies, Hopscotch. So there were 4 or 5 of these. All of them, these 4 or 5 who had raised VC capital, single digit or early double digit million. And in that phase, Supam's aggression, pace of execution, just doing the basics right. So, for example, at that time, this whole do we keep inventory versus do we be a marketplace debate used to be there, and people would, like most companies would build like a hybrid, that let me keep some inventory but some through drop shipping. Supam said we'll have everything in our warehouse, similar to Swiggy. Like the ecosystem is so early that drop shipping will always lead to a bad customer experience. uh, the, as I mentioned, the founding team was great. Even the quality of people they hired after our investment was very good. So he continuously stayed ahead of that peer set and raised couple of more rounds of capital. So first 3 years, 2 3 years of that journey were about saying that okay, in baby and kid space, FirstCry is the winner. But the bigger problem started after that. So in third, fourth year of our journey, Amazon launched this category, Flipkart launched this category, and then the question was that, hey, what is the right for you to exist? And when we had invested, for us, the global comp was diapers, but that also became the question that even in the US, if there isn't a vertical specialist, why in India will there be a vertical specialist? Someone will acquire them, and it will be a small outcome. And that is when the team's execution muscle really started to show, and every year they would just keep adding more and more modes to the business. So the first one was when they started out, most of the focus was diapers, personal care, etc. These are all low margin products, and also there are just 3 4 brands from whom you are buying. So as a platform, you are not really adding much value. So the first thing was, where is the consumer pain point and what other value can we add? So one of the pain points was in uh, categories like outdoor gear, which is pram, carrier, or in crib, those kind of categories, or toys, where the selection in India was very limited and brands were very expensive. So FirstCry was the first team to set up a large sourcing office in China. And very quickly, China supply became 25 30% of 20 25% of our sales, which for an Amazon or Flipkart, they have multiple fishes to fry. So they were not bothered about solving for this category. So that was like first mode. Second insight was that if we look at baby and kids clothes and footwear, there were very, very few brands back in the day. And there were a couple which were PE funded, went under. So again, either there were very premium brands like a UCB, or it was unbranded. So they said we'll build our own private label. So they built their own private label, Baby Hug, and a few more in apparel, which was value priced, high quality. And very quickly, China plus this apparel for them became 40 50% of their overall revenue. So now they had half of their business, which Flipkart, Amazon did not even have. Then FirstCry was one of the first e-commerce companies in India, actually the first e-commerce company in India to open offline franchisee stores, because they knew now that we have this unique supply, even for a small retailer, if they open a FirstCry store, they have a lot of unique selection and therefore they can do good business. So they started opening franchisee stores, profitable from day one. And it helped build consumer trust. These were early days of e-commerce. So when you walk into a FirstCry store, next time your tendency to buy online is higher. So this ended up doing that. Fourth, because they're still like 25-30% of the business was diapers, it is voluminous, low margin. They felt that, hey, if we are working with these third party logistics players, we will keep bleeding significantly. So can we build logistics in-house? So that's when Amitava, who was the COO of FirstCry, he started building logistics. And in early days, they did a lot of hacky things. They were one of the few companies to use buses and trains for line haul, where they would have someone who would get into a train with like large parcels, get off at destination. Similarly, the bus storage to lower the cost. Obviously, some of those things didn't scale and they move to more mainstream. But because of this necessity of low cost, they build their logistics in a very, very capital efficient, very frugal manner, and eventually carved it out into an independent company called XpressBees, which today is a unicorn in itself. So at that time, XpressBees did not exist. But as they started building out this muscle, they spun it out into a separate company. So it was all, I don't know if you guys have read this book called Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. If you haven't, I would highly, highly recommend, whether you want to be a founder or you want to go work in a startup. And he talks about the fact that in a startup journey there are no silver bullets, there are a lot of lead bullets, and this for me is a classic example of lead. Like they would keep firing one lead bullet after the other. These are all hard execution challenges, but just kept doing that and kept building those moats. And fast forward to today, they are by far the largest player in baby and kid space. I don't think there is even a distant second. Amazon, Flipkart obviously have scaled up well, but now there is no question will a FirstCry exist or not. You talk to any young parent and you will know what part of their wallet share goes to FirstCry. And and you also asked me what were the tenets which stayed consistent through that journey. So there were a couple of them. The first one was frugality, and which I wish we saw more of in today's startups. But Supam was very, very frugal in his approach from day one. And I'm sure a lot of you would have heard of those Amazon stories of how they use that door as a table in their office. That was the way of. So for Supam, one of the things I vividly remember was in their office in Pune. Uh, so they had this type of lighting, right? And in most offices, all of these are controlled by, I'm sure there would be like 3-4 switches somewhere which will switch off all of these. In their office, above every desk there was a thread. तो अगर आप अपने डेस्क से उठ के घर जा रहे हो, you pull that thread, switch off that light and go. So very simple. In a company of that size, it's not that bulb cost was going to change their life, but it was a very simple way of saying that, boss, every paisa matters, and we can't, like, the floor light will not be off on if like 1/3 of the floor is occupied. Supam's office used to be on 6th floor. End of the day, he would walk down the steps on every floor, switching the lights off if they were left open. So that was his way of conveying to his team that frugality is at the core of our business. So that was one. And second, which I've seen very consistently across all companies, is resilience. Because one challenge after the other, first saying, hey, are you the best team in this category? To then, will you compete against these horizontals? To then saying that, will this business ever be profitable? Just staying at it. And there was a time in 2014-15, if I remember correctly, when e-commerce completely went out of favor. And that was the time actually Myntra sold to Flipkart because they felt it will be hard to exist as a standalone vertical. And if they had been independent today, it would have been a $10 billion company. They sold for, I think, 200-300 million dollars. But Supam stayed at it. And around that time, we ended up acquiring Mahindra. So Baby Oy was acquired by Mahindra, and we ended up acquiring Mahindra Baby Oy business at FirstCry, not for the business itself, but because they said we'll put some capital along with it. So it was a very tough time. And for that capital, we said, okay, we'll buy Baby Oy also, we'll integrate, because we needed that capital. So just having that resilience to say, I'll fight another day and I'll keep going was something which again I really, really respect about Supam. So those are frugality and that resilience are two things which really stand out for me.
Well, that's like I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely loved that story. Just knowing about these journeys, I think it just gives you some kind of a framework, because we are also early in our journey, and we're kind of, both me and Ankit are big lovers of this word called tenets, because it kind of gives us boundary conditions, right? Because these are things that we do not break, irrespective of the kind of decisions that we want to make. So knowing that, large founders, people who have made like really large companies, kind of do something similar is exciting and encouraging. You've been in a lot of board meetings, so we'll go one level deeper. So you've been in Swiggy, Spinny, Meesho, FirstCry. Can you tell us about an interesting board meeting that you had, preferably a fight? Just kidding. But anything that could kind of tell us what happens in these board meetings, which for these large unicorns.
Sure. Yeah, so actually let me talk about one which was very, very pivotal for the company. And this is again going back to Meesho. So I spoke about the business model which we invested in, which was marketplace for micro entrepreneurs. And if we look at Meesho today, it's a classic consumer focused marketplace focused on value. And this was, this board meeting was, I think, second half of 2020, towards end of 2020, early 21, post COVID. And what we had started seeing was, because of COVID and when we had those lockdowns, e-commerce adoption in India really accelerated, because offline anyway stores were shut, and a lot of people historically who were not comfortable buying online, especially in tier 2 tier 3 cities, were almost forced to try it out. And once you try it out, you realize it's a great experience and you stick. So what we saw was, on Meesho, even though it was a platform built for resellers. So as an example, if you were checking out on Meesho, it would say, okay, how much do you want to mark up? So this kurti is 300. How much do you want to mark up? Because that reseller is making some money in the middle and product gets shipped to the consumer. It was that checkout flow. But consumers naturally started gravitating to the platform. So 10, 15, 20% of our business was coming from end consumers, even though the platform was not built for consumers. And therefore, what was becoming clear was two things. One, these micro entrepreneurs, the role that they were playing of curation, of solving for trust, that hey, I know you, so you buy from me, don't worry about that platform, etc., was going to get marginalized over time. And I'll bring a little bit of a side note here. So there is this very successful fund in China called Hill House, and the founder of Hill House, he was at one of our elevation events. He mentioned that whenever I look at a company, whether to invest or not, the question I ask myself is that, is time this company's enemy or is time this company's friend? And at that time, this discussion we started having, Vidit and I, that now this trend that we are seeing is, for our current business model, is time our enemy or time our friend? It was very clear that time is enemy. Now you can argue over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but more and more consumers will directly buy online. They will not need resellers in the middle. And we were seeing this evidence of consumers coming and buying without the platform being ready for them. So that's when Vidit took the brave call to say that it's both a risk and an opportunity, because now we have the opportunity to build like a pure marketplace, like a Taobao in China or like a Shopee. Every geography has a marketplace which is value focused, and every geography has a first party, like more inventory led convenience focused play. Like in China, there is JD, which is like Amazon in India or in the US, and there is Taobao. JD solves for convenience, next day delivery. Taobao is the cheapest. In Southeast Asia, there is Lazada, which is like Amazon solving for convenience. There is Shopee, which is solving for value. And they said, now we have the opportunity to build the Taobao or Shopee of India. So can we lean into that? And that's the, and also for context. Yeah, so this is early 21, actually, not late 20. SoftBank had just come in at a $2 billion valuation, and they had invested in the micro entrepreneur thesis that this still has legs, it can keep getting bigger. This was their second or third board meeting after the investment. Uh, and we go into the board meeting saying that we want to pivot from being reseller focused to being a consumer marketplace. And it was one of the most, like, I would say, debated, uh, push and pull board meetings I have been in. And obviously for someone who has just told their investment committee, this is the thesis, we are coming in at this valuation, to suddenly go back and tell them, now by the way the business has changed, is very hard. So there was that context. There was also this context of saying that now we have something going, why do we want to risk it? Because that one way consumer direction is one way street. Once you market directly to consumers, reseller business over time will keep shrinking. So it's a one way street. So do you want to preserve what you have created, or do you again want to go all in? So there was a lot of discussion, debate. Some people were saying that why don't we keep some budget and try it as an experiment. But for Vidit, it was very clear that it's not a choice, and I give him a lot of credit. Such a brave decision. In hindsight, it seems obvious, but it was such a brave decision to say we have a $2 billion company, but I know where the future is, and I will completely change direction and go after that. And it's fine if we lose this along the way. So that is probably one of the most important board meetings I've been in. I would not say we fully concluded in the board's mind that okay, we are going there, but Vidit was clear. So anyways, the board said you try it out. Next, by the time of next board meeting, there was enough done to know that, to give comfort to everyone else also, that this is where we have to go, and then rest is history. But that was a very pivotal board meeting.
That's brilliant. And we also talk a lot about, in general, whatever roles folks go out there and do, whether it's founder's office, it might not be a board meeting, but if you are, say, a product manager and you're trying to pivot the way a product is being built, you will need to get so many people on board, whether it's software developers, whether it's marketing, whether it's business, and stakeholder management, being able to meet, talk to people, convince them without authority. All of these are skills that are absolutely necessary. So I'm sure that that would have been at play even during this board meeting. And hats off to Vidit. I mean, I think it's one of those gutsy calls that worked out.
Sorry, one thing I'll add, and again, this is that extreme. I keep going back to customer obsession, but this is that extreme proof of customer obsession, right? Knowing that your end customer, who's today buying from a reseller, will buy directly tomorrow, and therefore, am I willing to bet everything on what I know my customer will need? So this is as stark an example as it can get.
Oh, that's brilliant. Switch gears again. Again, probably the last two questions that I wanted to ask you, and then we'll open up the floor. There are a few questions that we'll take from the audience. Why did you decide to invest in Mesa? थोड़ी सी हमारी तारीफ भी हम लोग सुन लेते हैं. But overall, what your thesis in the higher education space is, why you feel Mesa is a good fit for that thesis. We kind of know, but getting other people to also know about it would be helpful.
Sure. So, see, for us, one very broad thesis that we were chasing before we invested in Mesa was, like, if you look at the last generation of edtech companies, they were all focused on scale. And most of that has not worked out well because they were not focused on student outcomes. And therefore, our thesis was that the next generation of companies which will get created and which will actually build lasting value will be not focused on scale on day one. They'll be focused on outcomes. And by definition, it's contradictory. If you want to focus on outcomes, you can't chase scale very early. So that was the broad thesis we had. We did not, it's not as if specifically we were looking for someone trying to build a business school of the future for the tech world. And that's when I remember when Ankit and I met for that dinner, we started out with this discussion around meta thesis, saying outcome focused, very selective, etc. And we were almost finishing each other's sentences. And then, and by then, I also mentioned this. Like, I had met a bunch of these B school startups, and there were a lot of these 3 month, 6 month, 9 month online programs. And I was jarred by meeting them because it was very clear there was no student outcome, there was no retention, very poor customer or student NPS. So when, after aligning on the broad contours, when he mentioned business school, my first reaction was negative because I was coming from those biases. कि यार ये क्यों business school क्यों कर रहे हो? And but by the end of that dinner, when he shared how he was thinking about it, what the need gap was, what the sort of journey for students both of you were envisioning, by the end of that dinner, I was converted that this is very, very exciting. And also, one is the opportunity itself, but second, also as founders, realizing that it will be a very long and patient journey. Because for most founders, building in the new age tech world, uh, you want that hockey stick growth. And both you and Ankit, by definition, know this is not a business of hockey stick growth. So also knowing that founders are coming in with that awareness, with that patience, saying that we have to build it brick by brick, and in the long term, it will play out. So both of those things really got us over the line. And for me personally, one of the other on that softer things around investment decision making, cases where I actually went in with a negative bias, came out feeling very positive. Those cases I truly like then think hard that there's something here, because you have some biases, but in just one meeting they got challenged, and you got to a different point of view. So these were all of the things which came together and gave us conviction that we should invest. And the broader sort of thesis being that can this be like the INSEAD of the future being built in India, which today is starting from a very, very curated, very select cohort. Over time, the core program still remains very select, but other optionalities come out of it, whether it is smaller programs, B2B, etc. But can we build a university like an INSEAD or a Harvard from India? So that's the vision which got us excited.
No, that's great. And yesterday, I think 2 days ago, we also did a somewhat of a commencement speech, and that's where we were also saying that we are on this mission because if we can prove to the world today that a VC funded non-degree granting institution can be built from ground up and have its students do incredible things, it'll not only be success for us but for an entire ecosystem which needs to be changed. It's not changed for the last 50 years, and I truly believe next 10 to 15 years it has to change. So if we can build that example out, whether it's the Stanford of India or whatever it is that we want to build, I think it'll just open doors for many more such alternate universities that can be built from ground up without a lot of regulation. And I think that's what has excited us, and that will be what will excite us for the years to come. Now, given that these folks are starting their journey, any pieces of advice for them? It's a very unique experience that they're going to undergo. They're going to be pushed a lot. They've only yesterday seen the academic calendar for term one, and I could hear the gasps going out in the room कि इसमें मतलब सोने तो नहीं मिलने वाला. So it's going to be an incredible immersive experience. So any pieces of advice that you have for them?
See, I'll probably say a couple of things. One, if we look at whether it is for companies or individuals, if you really want to create exceptional outcomes, you have to bet on discontinuities or inflection curves. And if you go back in history, whether it was like from IBM in mainframes to Apple in PC to then Microsoft in operating system, so on and so forth, or Tesla in electric cars, there has to be some discontinuity which is happening. There has to be some inflection point, which if you really double down on, can lead to exceptional outcomes for you individually as well. And I think to that extent, you have already taken the right first step to say tech is where the puck is moving. And if you look at India today, last 8, 10, 12 years have been all about building the tech rails, tech infra, and a lot of that value creation, value capture is still ahead of us over next 10, 12, 15 years as per capita incomes go up. So bet on discontinuities. It will be riskier, but it will be much more rewarding versus say going and working in a PNG. A PNG will, well, no matter how hard you work, it will grow at 8.5% or 9.5%. So not really much you can do in that context. So that is one, and that, as I said, you've already taken the right first step. Second, which if I look at from my shoes as a manager, and all of you have worked for a few years, you will be entering the corporate world again. I've seen two types of people who do well. One is someone who comes in and says that, okay, I'll be a great team member, great employee, I'll do a great job of whatever is being told to me. And second is someone who comes in with a owner's mindset and saying that this is my company. And therefore, obviously, what is told to me is something I will do a great job of, but I will operate as if it's my company. I will think long term. I will think beyond what is my given domain. The amount of effort incremental effort needed when you operate with an owner's mindset is probably 10% more or lesser. But the kind of impact you can have is 10x more. So that would be the other piece of advice, that whether it is at Mesa over next 11 months, and here it's much easier because you are owning your career here. So it's easier. But when you go tomorrow and work in a company, don't think of it as a job. That, hey, they are an employer, it's a transaction, they pay me, I do what they ask me to do. Think of it as an owner. And what that will enable is, one, the amount of impact you will have. When you have that impact, the kind of roles you will get will be a lot more challenging, because for a manager, and some of you might have managed people earlier, you want to give the most challenging and most exciting pieces to people who act like owners. So you will get those pieces of work, therefore you will learn more. So it's a beautiful flywheel that you get into. So operate with that mindset. And as I said, it takes only 10% more effort versus someone who is being a good employee. I'm not even going to people who are slacking, because I'm sure none of you are going to be in that bucket. So operate with that owner's mindset. And the last thing I would say is, be patient. I'm seeing increasingly people come in and they feel like, hey, first 6 months the growth curve was very steep, it was exciting, now it's becoming a little mundane, let me move on to something else. Don't let that happen, because there is lot of value in just staying at one place, assuming you found the right culture, right set of people. Staying in one place, there will be those phases which will feel mundane, repetitive, but there is learning happening, there is compounding happening, and it might not be obvious at that point. So don't go after the shiny new thing. If few things are working for you, operate as an owner, be patient, and let your credibility compound, let your own capability, knowledge base compound, and that will really start paying off. So those are few pieces of advice that I would have for all of you.
I think it was just fantastic speaking with you, Mukul. I think last 1 hour at least I learned a lot, and probably the best fireside chat that we've had in such a long time. But I think I'll open the floor up. I think there are a few questions. So Veda, do you want to hand over the mics to a few students who might want to ask? Three students, yeah. Okay, cool. So
Okay. Okay, guys, for starters, I think a reaction is called for. Let's start with a reaction to whatever we witnessed today. Can we clap for what just happened?
Thank you.
That was a fairly powerful discussion. Thank you so much for being so transparent with us. Means a lot to the students at Mesa. We'll kick off with the question section. I think we had picked out 3 students. Can we have Gitansh stand up, please? You had sent us a question, Gitansh. Here you go.
First of all, thank you, sir, for such a powerful discussion. As Veda said rightly, that helped us get a lot of insights in terms of how can we start developing a mindset when we are spending this 1 year at Mesa. So my question is sort of directed or driven from an explored insight that I've seen with an ability that VCs have, which is to pick up and identify trends, right? So my question is towards to you as an investor who's been in this space, right? How do you identify emerging trends in industry, specifically where there are large incumbents already there, but no innovation has happened, or innovation has been relatively stagnant for the recent years?
Sure. So that's a great question, and the reason I say that is because amongst VCs globally, there are 2 schools of thought. One is that as a VC, your role is to imagine the future, and second is that as a VC, your job is to see the present clearly. And I'm in the second camp firmly. So I don't think as VCs, or at least personally, I can envision what the future is, but can we see the present clearly? And I spoke out some examples of saying that, okay, this in case of Mesa, there is a need for outcome focused education companies. In case of Swiggy, यार food delivery opportunity है, we didn't have the insight कि logistics आपको खुद करना पड़ेगा, but then see the present very clearly, which is where saying that is this the founder we want to partner with? Are they sharing any insights which really make us sit up and take notice? Is this the founder who can actually imagine the future that is going to be built? Is what our role is. So personally, that's been my approach. That we and the way it plays out is meeting a founder, be fully present. Phone side mein rakh do, tactical things, yaar. It's not rocket science, but just be fully present. Listen to what they are saying. Listen to why they took certain decisions. If they are making a certain trade-offs, why they are making those trade-offs. If you had a different point of view कि यार business school नहीं करना चाहिए, it's very easy to wrap up that dinner in 45 minutes and say it makes no sense to invest in a business school, versus being truly open and listening why they want to build a business school of the future, what is different. So that's been my approach, that see the present very clearly. And if you see the present very clearly, you will hopefully identify few exceptional founders who will build that future. So that's been my philosophy, at least.
Thank you, sir. That helps.
Thank you for answering that. So honestly, again, we have Agya next with the next question. Can you pass the mic to Agya, please?
Firstly, thank you, sir, for the very informative session. So I would like to ask you, like, you had a very remarkable journey from being an associate at Elevation Capital to now a managing partner. But I want to question you that what has been the major guiding force in your entire journey?
So for me, personally, the biggest guiding force, and not just at Elevation, even before Elevation, is am I getting better as an individual? And this is a much more of a personal driving force. And like I said, in VC, thankfully, it's a career where you are always challenged. You are always learning new things, not just about sectors. You will see different cycles. There was a 21 cycle where funds were flowing freely, and now we are in a phase where fundraising is much harder. Uh, you are also, as an individual, getting tested on different dimensions. So as a VC, we are making decisions under so much ambiguity, which I believe is a great life skill to have, because most of our decisions, the biggest decisions in our life, are with so little information, but you have to take that call. Similarly, in VC, you are failing a lot, because for us, like, it's a business of outliers. There will be few very big winners. There will be a lot. So a company failing or you losing your capital is a feature. It's not a bug. And therefore, all of these things, I also spoke about actually getting the opportunity to work with exceptional founders and learning from them. So all of these have fed back into saying, am I becoming better as an individual, whether it is in terms of investments, whether it is in terms of managing people, running a firm. So that is what has kept me going. And even now, there are newer challenges that I run into, and which keeps me going. कि यार अब ये next ये कैसे figure out करना है? Let me work on that. So that's been my guiding force.
Thank you so much.
I think the thing you said about ambiguity and challenges really strikes, because they're also heading into a direction of building their own businesses from scratch, and some of what you'll share here has been really helpful. The next person we have is Shrikant. Can you please stand up? Can we have the mic sent over?
Firstly, thank you for the amazing session. It was very insightful. I had the same question on the first question lines. Mine is most of product. So, how do you identify something which is trendy or a long-term business opportunity? Example, bubble tea. Bubble tea, when it came up, it was very trendy. It seemed very trendy, but you see a lot of VCs investing in right now. So, how do you identify a product which is trendy or else a long-term business opportunity in future?
So I'll go back to probably for 10th time today on customer obsession. There is no other way. I don't read McKinsey report or don't listen to these panels and say if the VC says, hey, this or this global AI scare AI is the future, or if a VC is saying this is the space I like, and then you go and build, don't listen to any of that. These are all good pointers, but ultimate truth comes from the customer. And is there a problem there to be solved? And I'll take maybe a couple of minutes to share another very real example. So we had invested in this company called Spinny in the used car space in end 2018. At that time, in the used car space, there were I think 3 or 4 unicorns. There was Car Trade, Car Deco, Cars 24. OLX had a big auto vertical. So the general sort of consensus was that whatever has to happen in this space has happened. And here there was a founder, Neeraj, running Spinny almost for 3-4 years, grinding it out. And his view was कि बॉस ये इतनी कैपिटल चली गई, इतने यूनिकॉर्न्स बन गए, बट यूज्ड कार बायर का तो आज भी वही पेन है. If I want to buy a used car, I still am buying from a dealer where I don't know what I'm getting. And it's a very bad experience, and no one has solved for the used car buyer. And then he pivoted to this model of full stack, saying, I will take these cars, refurbish, sell to the consumer, give warranty like a new car. And that is what will fundamentally change their experience. So we invested in Spinny 2018 and in their Series A. Today, most of the other used car companies actually have either faded away or gone sideways, and they are the largest in that space. So he was not focusing on trendy. Used car was not trendy or where the next market is. He was just focusing on, do I have a consumer insight which no one else has? And can I go and build out for that? So that is what I would always urge you to go for. Like, look for that consumer insight or pain point which no one else has.
I think we'll stop with the questions. We are running out of time. So firstly, thank you, Mukul, for coming here. Each one of the students here are going to be undergoing Mesa Startup Lab. They're going to be building their own businesses. So all the insights that you've given here about being customer obsessive, having that resilience, I'm sure they're going to imbibe those and going to build something exciting. Our wishful thinking, mine and Ankit, tells us that the reason why you moved from Gurugram to Bangalore was because Mesa School is here. But that
was
I
a
think,
big reason.
So, but that I think only makes us hopeful that once people start building something, you'll visit us again and you'll get to see things that these people have built on the basis of the discussion that we had today. But overall, thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule to actually come here, spend time with us, the students. We absolutely loved it, and we would love to host you again. Big round of applause for Mukul Arora.
No, thank you. Thank you so much once again for the opportunity, and to all of you for listening patiently, being participative. And like you said, in this Mesa Labs, happy to spend time. And who knows, hopefully we end up investing in a couple of Mesa Lab companies as well and partner with them. And irrespective of whether you build your own company or go on a different path, wish you all the best, wish you all success, and I'm sure you will all do really well. Great meeting all of you.
Thank you.